My foreman fired me at the weigh station for refusing to let an overloaded truck pass. He said scale operators don't refuse overweight loads. I was the only DOT-certified inspector on duty. 3 days later, that truck crossed the old mill bridge and it collapsed beneath it. So I made one phone call that brought down everyone involved. The fluorescent lights above Scale Station 4 buzzed like a swarm of tired bees. It was 6:47 p.m. on a Tuesday in late October, and the air coming through the cracked window carried the bite of the first real frost. I pulled my flannel jacket tighter and watched the readout on the digital scale display settle into a number that made my stomach drop. 94,600 pounds. The federal limit for a 5-axle semi on a Class 2 county road was 80,000 pounds. This truck was nearly 15 tons over. I glanced through the grimy glass at the red Peterbilt idling on the scale platform, its diesel exhaust curling into the evening air like a lazy gray ribbon. The driver, a heavy-set man in a faded crossway hauling jacket, was leaning out the window, already looking impatient. I picked up the radio handset. Unit 342, you're overweight. Gross weight reads 94,600. You'll need to offload or reroute to a Class I highway. I'm issuing a hold order. Silence. Then the driver's voice crackled back, rough and annoyed. Come on, man. I've been running this route for 2 years. Never had a problem before. And you won't have one tonight either, but not at this weight. County Route 9 has the old mill bridge 3 miles south. That bridge is rated for 80,000 max. You cross it at this weight, you could bring it down. I'll call my dispatcher, the driver muttered. I set the handset down and logged the hold in the system. In 30 years on this job, I'd flagged maybe 200 overweight trucks. Most drivers grumbled, offloaded at a nearby yard, and moved on. It was routine. It was the law. It was the reason I had a DOT certification hanging on the wall behind me, framed, slightly crooked, but always current. At 7:05 p.m., the glass door of the scale house banged open. Dale Whitmore stepped inside, his steel-toed boots clanging against the metal floor. He was a big man, broad-shouldered, with a square jaw that he liked to set in a way that was supposed to look authoritative. His orange safety vest was spotless. Mine had coffee stains and a rip in the left pocket from where I'd caught it on a bolt last summer. "Frank," he said, not as a greeting but as an accusation. "What's the hold on 342? Overweight? 15 tons over? Crossway, hauling rig. I can read the log, Frank." He stepped closer. The heat from the space heater between us suddenly felt like it wasn't enough. "Let him through." I looked at him. "Dale, the bridge has been there since the 1970s. It's fine. Let him through. It's rated for 80,000. This truck is 94,600. That's not a suggestion. That's a federal standard. I'm not clearing it." Dale's jaw tightened. His eyes narrowed the way they always did when someone didn't bow fast enough. "Frank, you listen to me. Crossway Hauling moves freight for half the businesses in this county. Nelson Cross is a personal friend of Senator Granger. You don't want to create a problem where there isn't one." "I'm not creating a problem, Dale. I'm preventing one." The silence between us was thick enough to fill a pothole. Outside, the truck's engine rumbled. Inside, the fluorescent light buzzed. Dale pulled out his phone, glanced at it, then looked at me with an expression I'd seen before. The one that said he'd already made up his mind and was just going through the motions of pretending I had a choice. "Scale operators don't refuse overweight loads, Frank. We document and wave them through. That's how it works." "No," I said quietly. "That's not how it works. That's how people get killed." Dale's face changed. The fake patience drained away like water through a cracked pipe, and what was left underneath was something hard and cold. He reached into his back pocket and pulled out a folded piece of paper. He snapped it open and slapped it flat on my desk, right on top of the hold order I'd just logged. "Effective immediately," he said. "Your employment with the County Way Station Authority is terminated. Failure to follow direct orders. Insubordination. That's the official reason." I stared at the paper. It was a termination form, predated, already signed at the bottom by Dale and by someone from the County Human Resources Office, whose name I didn't recognize. The timestamp read 6:30 p.m. 17 minutes before I'd even flagged the truck. He'd come here tonight already planning to do this. "You had this written up before you walked through the door," I said. Dale shrugged. "I had a feeling you'd be difficult." "You've always been difficult, Frank. 30 years of difficult. The world changes, the rules change, and you're still standing there pointing at that DOT certificate like it's a shield. It's not. It's a piece of paper, And so was this. He tapped the termination form with his index finger. I stood up slowly. My knees ached. It was going to rain. I could feel it in my joints. I took my DOT certification off the wall and tucked it under my arm. Then I reached for my thermos, my jacket, and the small portable radio I'd bought with my own money 12 years ago because the county issued one kept cutting out. "Those are county property," Dale said. "The jacket's mine. The thermos is mine. The radio's mine. You can check the receipts." He didn't say anything. I walked past him, opened the door, and stepped out into the cold. The night air hit me like a wall, sharp, clean, indifferent. The Peterbilt was still idling on the scale. The driver watched me through his windshield. I could see the glow of his phone against his face. He was probably texting Dale right now, asking if he was clear to go. I walked to my truck, a 2009 Silverado with rust spots along the wheel wells and a heater that took 10 minutes to warm up. I sat in the driver's seat for a long time, my hands on the steering wheel, my breath clouding the air inside the cab. My phone buzzed. A text from Karen, "How's the shift?" "Soup's on the stove when you're home." I didn't answer. Not yet. I needed a minute to figure out how to tell my wife that at 58 years old, after 3 decades of honest work, I'd just been fired for doing my job correctly. At 7:24 p.m., I watched in my rearview mirror as the red Peterbilt rolled off the scale platform and headed south on County Route 9. I watched its taillights disappear over the small ridge toward the old mill bridge. I sat there until I couldn't see them anymore. Then I started the engine and drove home. The soup was potato leek. Karen had made it from scratch. She was sitting at the kitchen table when I walked in, reading a library book with her reading glasses perched on the end of her nose. She looked up, saw my face, and closed the book without saying a word. "I got fired," I said. She set her glasses down. "For what?" "For doing my job." She nodded slowly, the way she does when she's processing something that hasn't fully hit her yet. "Sit down," she said. "I'll warm you a bowl." I didn't sleep that night. Not because of the anger, though, that was there, sitting in my chest like a stone, but because of the truck. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw those taillights disappearing over the ridge. The old mill bridge was a steel truss structure built in 1974. It had been inspected 6 years ago and flagged as structurally adequate but requiring monitoring. That was bureaucratic language for "it's holding, but don't push it." An overloaded truck crossing it at night when the cold made the metal more brittle was exactly the kind of push that could tip it from holding to gone. At 4:15 a.m., I got out of bed and went to my home office, a small room off the hallway that Karen had painted a pale blue 3 summers ago. I sat down at my desk and opened my personal laptop. For years, I'd kept a parallel log at home, not because I didn't trust the county system, but because I'd learned a long time ago that digital records in a system controlled by someone like Dale Whitmore had a way of disappearing. My logs were meticulous. Date, time, truck ID, company, weight reading, hold status, resolution. Every overweight truck I'd flagged in the last 5 years was in that spreadsheet, 237 entries. And of those 237, I could see a pattern forming in the data that made my hands go still on the keyboard. Crossway hauling trucks appeared 89 times. Of those 89 flags, 63 had been overridden by Dale Whitmore. 63 times, an overweight crossway truck had been released onto County Route 9 despite my hold orders. 63 times that truck had crossed the old mill bridge, or one of the other aging bridges along that route. I scrolled through the entries. The overrides had started about 3 years ago, right around the time Dale had bought that new boat, the one he kept docked at Lake Hensley, the one with the twin outboard motors that cost more than my house. I'd never said anything about the boat. It wasn't my business where he got his money. But now, staring at the numbers, the connection was as clear as a crack in a windshield. I copied the spreadsheet to a flash drive. Then I printed it all, 14 pages. I put the printout in a manila envelope and sealed it. I put the flash drive in my jacket pocket. At 5:30 a.m., I made coffee and sat on the back porch, watching the sky turn from black to gray. The frost was still in the grass, and my breath hung in the air like smoke from a candle that had just been blown out. Karen found me there at 6:00 a.m. She handed me a fresh cup and sat in the chair beside me. "You've got that look," she said. "What look?" "The one you get when you're not just mad. You're planning something." I took a sip of coffee. It was bitter and hot and exactly what I needed. "I kept logs," I said. Every truck Dale ever forced me to release. Crossway hauling shows up 89 times. He let 63 of them go. Karen was quiet for a moment. That's a lot of weight over a lot of bridges. Yes, it is. What are you going to do? I thought about it. I thought about calling the state dot, but Dale had friends there, I knew that much. I thought about going to the sheriff, but the sheriff played golf with Senator Granger every Thursday. I thought about the county commissioner, but the commissioner had accepted campaign donations from Nelson Cross at a fundraiser I'd read about in the local paper. Then I thought about Ray Castellano. I hadn't spoken to Ray in almost 10 years. He'd been a state dot investigator back then, assigned to a corruption case involving a paving contractor who was cutting asphalt mixes with cheap filler. I'd been the only witness willing to testify. Everyone else had been scared silent or paid off. My testimony had kept Ray's case alive and led to 3 convictions. Ray had told me, standing in the courthouse hallway after the verdict, "You ever need anything, Frank, anything at all, you call me." I still had his number. Somewhere. I found Ray's number in an old address book I kept in the bottom drawer of my desk, a leather-bound thing with cracked edges and pages yellowed to the color of old newspaper. Karen had given it to me for our 20th anniversary, back when people still wrote things down. His number was there, scribbled in blue ink beneath Castellano R, with a note, "Says he owes you one." I dialed at 7:12 a.m. The phone rang 4 times and I was about to hang up when a voice answered, gravelly, lower than I remembered but unmistakable. "Castellano? Ray. It's Frank Morrison." Frank Morrison. The way he said my name told me he remembered. There was a pause, the creak of a chair, the sound of liquid being poured. Coffee, I hoped, at this hour. "Well, I'll be damned. I've been waiting for this call for 15 years. You knew I'd call someday. I hoped you would. A man like you doesn't walk through a fire like that and then just disappear." "What's going on, Frank?" I told him everything. The way station, the overweight truck, Dale's override, the firing, the logs. I told him about Crossway hauling and the 63 overridden holds. I told him about the Old Mill Bridge and the fact that at this very moment that red Peterbilt had probably already crossed it. Or maybe it hadn't. Maybe it was still out there, rumbling through the dark, too heavy, too fast, too much. Ray didn't interrupt. He listened the way a man listens when he's been trained to hear what's between the words. When I finished, there was a long silence. Then he said, "Don't take this the wrong way, Frank, but I hope that bridge is still standing. It was standing when I left last night. Let's hope it stays that way. In the meantime, I want you to do exactly 2 things. First, don't talk to anyone, not the sheriff, not the county, not a single soul at that way station. Second, send me those logs, every page. I still have friends at the state dot, and I know a young reporter who's been sniffing around Senator Granger's campaign finances for months. This might be the thread that unravels the whole sweater." I mailed the flash drive that afternoon, wrapped in brown paper, sent by registered mail to a P.O. box Ray had given me. Then I waited. Waiting, I've learned, is the hardest part of any fight. It's the space between planting a seed and seeing it break through the soil, dark, quiet, and full of doubt. Karen brought me a sandwich at noon. I was sitting at the kitchen table, staring at the manila envelope I printed, rereading the numbers until they blurred. She set the plate down and said, "You did the right thing, Frank. You always do the right thing. The problem is, the right thing doesn't always do right by you." I ate the sandwich. It was ham and cheese on rye. I don't remember tasting it. Ray called back on Thursday, 3 days after I'd sent the flash drive. His voice had a different quality, now sharper, more focused, like a blade being drawn from a sheath. "Frank, I've had my people look at your logs. They're meticulous. They cross-reference perfectly with state weight station records, where those records still exist. Want to guess what we found?" "Tell me." "Starting about 3 years ago, someone began deleting override entries from the state system. Your holds are there, but the resolutions are blank. No notation of who authorized the release. No weight recheck, nothing. It's as if those trucks simply vanished after you flagged them. Whoever did this wasn't sloppy. They were thorough. But they weren't thorough enough to know that a stubborn man in a way station was keeping his own records at home." My grip tightened on the phone. Dale, almost certainly. But he's not acting alone." I pulled Crossway hauling's dot filings. They've had 3 overweight citations in the last 5 years, all dismissed. Every single one, the hearing officer on all 3. A man named Gerald Pratt, who happens to be Senator Granger's former law partner. The web was bigger than I'd thought. I sat down on the edge of the couch. Karen was in the kitchen washing dishes. I could hear the water running, the soft clink of plates. She glanced at me, and I gave her a small nod. Keep going. I'm okay. There's more, Ray continued. I sent your logs to Tom Blevins at the State Engineering Office. You know Tom? By reputation. He's the deputy chief engineer, right? Right. And he's been trying to get funding for a bridge assessment on County Route 9 for 2 years. Every request gets buried. Tom pulled the original structural report on the Old Mill Bridge from 2012. It was flagged as structurally deficient priority repair. That report was signed off by the County Infrastructure Committee. Want to guess who chaired that committee? Senator Granger. Now you're cooking. The report was buried. The repair funding was diverted. Tom doesn't know where yet. And the bridge has been carrying traffic for 12 years, with a rating that should have gotten it closed or reinforced. Your overweight trucks have been rolling across a bridge that was already on life support. I closed my eyes. The image of those taillights came back again. The red glow fading over the ridge, the dark road beyond, the bridge I'd sworn to protect, that I'd lost my job trying to protect. Ray, what's our next move? I'm meeting with Ben Calloway, the reporter, tomorrow. He's going to run the story, but we need to time it right. We need more than logs and deleted records. We need a live example, something that proves the danger isn't theoretical. You mean another overloaded truck? I mean we catch one in the act, with documentation, with witnesses, and we make sure it never reaches that bridge. The call came at 11:47 p.m. on Saturday night. Not from Ray, from a number I didn't recognize. I answered it in the dark, Karen stirring beside me, her hand instinctively reaching for my arm. Mr. Morrison, this is Miguel Santos. I drove the red Peterbilt on Tuesday, the one at the scale house. My pulse quickened. I sat up, swung my legs over the side of the bed, and pressed the phone to my ear. I remember, Mr. Morrison, I'm sorry. I didn't want to drive that route. I told my dispatcher the load was too heavy. He said it was cleared. I saw you get fired, and I knew it wasn't right. None of it was right. None of it was right. Where are you, Miguel? Parked at the rest stop on Route 9, about 4 miles north of the Old Mill Bridge. I've got another load. Same weight, maybe heavier. They told me to cross the bridge tonight because nobody's watching the scales after midnight. My jaw clenched. Don't move. Do not cross that bridge. Stay where you are. I called Ray. It rang once. Frank, we've got a live one. Crossway truck, overweight, about to cross the Old Mill Bridge tonight. Driver's name is Miguel Santos. He's willing to talk. Ray's voice went cold and precise. Where is he? Rest stop, 4 miles north of the bridge. I'm calling Tom Blevins and Ben Calloway right now. Keep the driver there. I'll have a state inspection team and a camera crew at that bridge in 90 minutes. This is it, Frank. This is the live example we needed. I drove to the rest stop in the dark. The Silverado's heater was struggling, and the windshield kept fogging from my breath. I found Miguel in the parking lot, sitting in the cab of his Peterbilt, with the engine running and the dome light on. He was a small man shorter than money, with dark circles under his eyes, and hands that wouldn't stop shaking. He showed me the bill of lading. 97,400 pounds, almost 10 tons over the limit, on a bridge that was already dying. I can't do it again, Mr. Morrison, he said. I've been crossing that bridge for 2 years. Every time I hold my breath, but every time I feel it shudder under me. I can't do it no more. You won't have to, I said. At 1:20 a.m., 2 state inspection vans and a sedan carrying Ben Calloway and his photographer arrived at the rest stop. Tom Blevins was there in person, tall, thin, with wire-rimmed glasses and the serious expression of a man who'd been fighting a losing battle for too long. He inspected the truck on the spot, documented the weight, photographed the bill of lading, and issued an immediate federal hold. Then we drove to the Old Mill Bridge. Tom walked the length of it with a flashlight and a structural sensor I didn't recognize. When he came back, his face was pale in the moonlight. This bridge shouldn't be carrying passenger cars, let alone trucks, he said. The steel fatigue is advanced. 3 more crossings at that weight, maybe 5, and it would have collapsed. Not might have, would have. Ben Calloway's camera flash went off, bright and sharp in the darkness, freezing the moment like a bullet made of light. The story was coming together. The evidence was mounting. And for the first time since Dale had slapped that termination paper on my desk, I felt something other than anger. I felt the ground shifting. Ben Calloway's article went live at 6:00 a.m. on Wednesday, November 12th. The headline read, "Inside the System That Almost Killed How Overweight Trucks Were Waved Through a Dying Bridge," and the man who was fired for trying to stop it. I was sitting at my kitchen table when Karen walked in from her morning walk, the newspaper tucked under her arm. She set it down in front of me without a word. My name wasn't in the headline, but it was in the third paragraph. Frank Morrison, a 30-year DOT certified scale operator, was terminated on the same night he flagged a Crossway hauling truck carrying 94,600 pounds, nearly 15 tons, over the federal limit across a bridge rated for 80,000. The article laid out everything. The deleted override records, the 63 waived holds on Crossway trucks, the 2012 structural deficiency report buried by the County Infrastructure Committee, the senator's connection to both the hearing officer who dismissed Crossway citations and the committee that buried the bridge report, Miguel Santos's testimony, Tom Blevins' inspection findings, the photographs of the bridge's deteriorating steel joints, taken in the cold blue light of dawn, showing cracks that look like veins in the back of an old hand. But the article wasn't the only strike. Ray had coordinated with two other journalists, one at a state-level outlet, one at a National Transportation Safety blog. All three stories dropped within the same hour. By 8:30 a.m., the comment sections were on fire. By 10:00 a.m., the story had been shared over 4,000 times across social media platforms. By noon, someone had created a hashtag, Bridge Betrayal, that was trending regionally. I watched it all unfold from my kitchen table, my phone buzzing every few minutes with texts from people I hadn't heard from in years. Former coworkers, old neighbors, a guy I'd gone to high school with who now ran a trucking blog and wanted an interview. I didn't respond to any of them. Ray had been clear, stay quiet, stay still, let the story do the work. At 2:15 p.m., my phone rang. It was the County Human Resources Office. A woman named Patricia, no last name given, told me that my termination was under review and that I should stand by for further communication. I thanked her and hung up. Karen raised an eyebrow from across the room. "They're feeling the heat," she said. "They're feeling the first degree," I said. "Their second and third are still coming." By Thursday, the story had jumped from digital to physical. The state's largest newspaper ran it above the fold with a photograph of the Old Mill Bridge, taken from below its rusted underbelly exposed against a gray sky, the river running beneath it like a slow, indifferent witness. The caption read, "A bridge too far, neglect, corruption, and the man who said no." The governor's office released a statement at 11:00 a.m. calling for an immediate and thorough investigation into the County Way Station Authority and the handling of structural assessments for all bridges on County Route 9. The language was careful, political. The kind of words that are designed to sound like action while committing to nothing. But it was enough to open doors. By afternoon, the state attorney general's office had announced a formal inquiry. Dale Whitmore's name was in every article. So was Senator Granger's and Nelson Cross's. The three of them had been operating in the shadows for years, confident that their arrangement overweight permits in exchange for campaign contributions and personal kickbacks would never see daylight. They counted on men like me staying quiet, staying fired, staying afraid. They'd counted wrong. I was watching the evening news at 6:30 p.m. when the anchor cut to a live press conference. Senator Granger stood behind a podium outside his district office, his face the color of wet concrete. He denied everything. He called the articles irresponsible journalism and a coordinated smear campaign. He said he had full confidence in the county infrastructure process and that the Old Mill Bridge was regularly inspected and fully safe. At that exact moment, Tom Blevins' inspection report was sitting on the desk of the state attorney general, documenting steel fatigue levels that exceeded danger thresholds by 40%. Karen and I looked at each other. She shook her head slowly. "He doesn't know when to stop digging," she said. "No," I said. "He doesn't." My phone buzzed. A text from Ray, "Watch tomorrow's papers. The second wave is coming." And Frank, "Get a good suit cleaned up. You're going to need it." I didn't ask what he meant. Ray Castellano was the kind of man who delivered on promises the way the sun delivers on dawn, inevitable, complete, and impossible to stop. The hearing was held on Monday, November 17th in a county courthouse that smelled of old wood and lemon cleaning solution. Judge Patricia Holloway presided, a woman with silver hair, reading glasses on a chain around her neck, and a reputation for having no patience for political theater. The room was packed. Reporters lined the back wall. Camera crews clustered outside the doors, their lenses pressed against the glass like eyes against a keyhole. I wore my only sport coat, navy blue, bought for my daughter's wedding 6 years ago, slightly tight across the shoulders now. Karen sat beside me in a burgundy blouse, her hand resting on my forearm, steady as a rock in a stream. Dale Whitmore was already inside when I arrived. He was sitting at a table with his lawyer, a thin man with a pinched face, who kept shuffling papers like he was looking for one that might save his client's life. Dale didn't look at me when I walked in. He stared straight ahead, his jaw set, his hands flat on the table, but I could see the tightness around his eyes, the way his collar seemed too tight, the faint sheen of sweat on his forehead despite the chill in the room. Senator Granger was not present. His lawyer was a woman in a gray suit, who spoke in calm, measured tones and objected to nearly every question the state's attorney asked. Nelson Cross was also absent, though his company's records had been subpoenaed and entered into evidence the day before. The state's attorney, a man named David Rourke, with a broad build and a voice made for courtrooms, called me as his first witness. I walked to the stand, placed my hand on the Bible, and swore to tell the truth. The wood of the witness box was smooth and cool under my fingertips. "Mr. Morrison," Rourke began, "can you describe your role at the County Way Station Authority?" I was a scale operator, 30 years DOT certified for the last 18. My job was to weigh incoming commercial trucks, flag any that exceeded federal or state weight limits, and issue hold orders until the loads were reduced to legal weight or the trucks were rerouted to appropriate highways. And on the evening of November 4th, what happened? I told them everything: the 94 600-pound reading, the hold order, Dale's arrival, the predated termination form, the truck being released onto County Route 9, heading south toward the Old Mill Bridge. I knew was rated for 80,000 pounds and had been flagged as structurally deficient 12 years ago. Dale's lawyer rose for cross-examination. "Mr. Morrison, isn't it true that your termination was due to a pattern of insubordination, not a single incident?" "No," I said. "It is not true. In 30 years, I never received a single disciplinary action. Not one. My performance reviews were consistently rated exemplary. I have the records at home if the court would like to see them." "Then why would Foreman Whitmore terminate you?" "Because I refused to let an overloaded truck cross a bridge that couldn't handle it. And because that truck belonged to a company whose owner is a friend of Senator Granger's. And because Dale Whitmore had been overriding my hold orders for 3 years, 63 times, and he didn't want a man in that station who kept records of every single one." The room went quiet. I could hear the scratch of pens on notepads, the soft hum of the overhead lights, the distant sound of a truck engine outside on the road, a sound I'd heard 10,000 times, a sound that used to mean work and routine and order, and now meant something else entirely. Judge Holloway looked at me over her reading glasses. "Mr. Morrison, you may step down." I walked back to my seat. Karen squeezed my arm. I glanced at Dale once, just once. He was looking at me now, and what I saw in his eyes wasn't anger or defiance. It was something smaller, something that looked like the first crack in a dam that knows the water is coming. The second wave Ray had promised hit on Wednesday, November 19th, 2 days after the hearing. Ben Calloway's follow-up article was longer than the first 3,000 words, with documents attached as downloadable PDFs. The headline was simple and devastating: "The Money Trail: How Senator Granger's Committee Diverted Bridge Repair Funds to Allies." Ray's investigation had uncovered what Tom Blevins could not. The $4.2 million allocated by the state for bridge repairs on County Route 9 in 2013 had been redirected through a shell consulting firm called Greystone Infrastructure Partners. Greystone had no office, no employees, and no website. What it did have was a bank account that received the full $4.2 million and then dispersed it, $1.8 million, to a construction company owned by Nelson Cross's brother-in-law, $1.4 million to a political action committee that supported Senator Granger's re-election campaign, and the remaining $1 million scattered across smaller payments to accounts that were still being traced. The paper trail was a masterpiece of arrogance. Greystone had been registered using Senator Granger's home address. The PAC contributions were signed by his campaign treasurer. and the authorization to redirect the funds bore the signature of every member of the County Infrastructure Committee, including, in bold black ink, the signature of Senator Richard Granger, chairman. By noon, federal investigators had joined the state inquiry. By 30:00 p.m., the FBI's Public Corruption Unit had opened a preliminary file. By 5:00 p.m., Senator Granger's office had issued a second statement, this one noticeably shorter than the first, announcing that he would cooperate fully with all investigations while maintaining his innocence. The word fully was doing a lot of heavy lifting in that sentence. Dale Whitmore was served with a subpoena at his home that evening. I know this because Ray told me, and because a photograph of Dale standing in his driveway, holding the document with a face like thunder, appeared on the front page of the state newspaper the next morning. His boat was visible in the background, still docked at Lake Hensley, its twin outboard motors catching the light like two chrome eyes staring back at the camera. Nelson Cross tried to flee. He booked a one-way flight to a country with no extradition treaty, but federal agents met him at the airport gate. The photograph of Cross being escorted through the terminal in handcuffs became the second most shared image of the week right behind the rusted joints of the old mill bridge. I watched it all from my porch. Karen brought me coffee at 10:00 a.m., a sandwich at 1:00 p.m., and a glass of iced tea at 4:00 p.m. She didn't say much. She didn't need to. We've been married long enough to know that sometimes the best thing you can do for someone is simply be in the same room. My phone rang at 6:47 p.m., almost exactly 2 weeks since Dale had walked into my scale house and changed both our lives. It was Ray. "Frank," he said. I could hear the smile in his voice, the quiet satisfaction of a man watching a building collapse in slow motion. The right building, for the right reasons. The dominoes are falling, all of them. Dale's lawyer is already talking plea deal. Granger's party is distancing themselves. And the governor just signed an emergency order to close and inspect every bridge on County Route 9. Your bridge, Frank. The one you tried to save. The hearings concluded on December 2nd. Judge Holloway's courtroom was standing room only for the final session, and the air inside was thick with the kind of tension that makes your skin prickle, the feeling of watching a tall tree that's been leaning for years finally commit to falling. Dale Whitmore went first. His lawyer had negotiated a plea agreement cooperation in exchange for a reduced sentence. Dale sat in the witness box, 10 pounds lighter than I'd last seen him, his spotless orange safety vest replaced by a gray suit that hung off his shoulders like it had been borrowed from a bigger man. His voice was flat, mechanical, the voice of someone reciting a eulogy for their own career. He admitted to overriding hold orders on overweight trucks 89 times over 3 years, not just the 63 I'd logged. He admitted to deleting the override records from the state system, a task he performed late at night from his home computer, a bottle of bourbon on the desk beside him. He admitted to receiving payments from Nelson Cross $2,000 per overridden hold, delivered in cash envelopes at a diner off Highway 61, the same diner every time, the same booth by the window. He admitted that he fired me because I was the only one who kept records, the only one who couldn't be scared, bought, or silenced, the only one standing between Crossway Hauling's profit margin and a bridge that was one heavy truck away from catastrophe. Senator Granger's turn came next. He did not take a plea deal. He sat before Judge Holloway with the posture of a man who still believed he could talk his way out of anything, but the evidence was a wall, and his words bounced off it like pebbles. The Greystone Infrastructure Partners documents, the redirected repair funds, the 2012 structural deficiency report he had personally shelved, the campaign contributions from Crossway Hauling, disguised through 3 layers of packs. Each piece of evidence was laid before him like a brick in a road leading to one destination. Judge Holloway listened. She asked precise, surgical questions. She did not raise her voice. She did not need to. When Granger's lawyer attempted to argue that the evidence was circumstantial and politically motivated, the judge removed her glasses, let them hang on their chain, and said, "Counselor, shell companies registered at my client's home address are not circumstantial. They are a confession written in legalese." Nelson Cross, seated in the row behind his lawyer, stared at the floor. He hadn't spoken a word since his arrest. His brother-in-law's construction company had been raided by federal agents the week before, and the records seized from that raid showed that not a single dollar of the $1.8 million it received had gone toward any construction project, bridges, roads, or otherwise. It had vanished into private accounts, vacation properties, and a condo in Florida that Nelson Cross's wife had listed on a rental website under a different name. The sentencing would come later. But the downfall was complete. Three men who had treated public safety as a private profit machine stood in a courtroom, exposed, stripped of their authority, and facing the kind of consequences that don't come with a receipt. I walked out of the courthouse into cold December air that felt clean and sharp, like the first breath after being underwater. Karen was waiting on the bench by the front steps, her coat buttoned to the top, her cheeks pink from the wind. She stood when she saw me and took my hand. "It's done," I said. "No," she said, squeezing my hand. It started. The call from the governor's office came on January 14th, a bright winter morning when the sky was the color of polished steel, and the air was so cold it made your eyes water. I was on the back porch, coffee in hand, watching a cardinal perch on the bare branches of Karen's crepe myrtle tree. The bird was impossibly red against the gray like a single ember that refused to go out. "Mr. Rolla." "Morrison," the voice on the phone said, "the governor would like to speak with you." There was a brief pause, then a deeper voice warm practiced, the voice of a man who made a living being persuasive. "Frank, I want to thank you. What you did took courage, not the loud kind, the quiet kind. The kind that stands at a scale station at 7 o'clock at night and says no when it would be easier to say yes. That kind of courage is rare, and this state is in your debt." He paused. I waited. The cardinal flew away. "I'm creating a new position, Chief Safety Inspector for the entire 9th District. Full oversight of all way stations, bridge assessments, and commercial vehicle compliance. I want you to take it. Full back pay from the date of your termination, a public apology from the county, and the authority to make sure what happened on your watch never happens again." I thought about it for exactly 3 seconds. "I'll take it," I said. The old mill bridge was closed the day after Ben Calloway's first article ran. It was demolished in March, and a new bridge reinforced concrete, rated for modern freight loads, built to last 100 years, was opened by summer. Federal funding, secured as a direct result of the investigation, replaced not just that bridge, but 4 others along County Route 9. Every compromised structure, every flag that had been ignored, every warning that had been buried, all of it came to light and all of it was fixed. Miguel Santos kept his job. Crossway Hauling was dissolved, its assets seized, its operating license permanently revoked. Miguel found work with a regional carrier that followed the rules, and he sent me a Christmas card that first year. Just a simple card with a snow scene on the front, and inside the words, "You saved my life, Mr. Morrison. You just didn't know it yet." And that was the twist I hadn't seen coming. I thought my story was about losing something, a job, a reputation, a place I'd stood for 30 years. But it was really about what that loss uncovered. The buried report, the diverted funds, the bridges that were one truck away from collapse. My firing didn't just expose Del Whitmore. It exposed a system that had been rotting from the inside for over a decade. And because it was exposed, 5 bridges were replaced, thousands of trucks were inspected properly. And God only knows how many lives were saved. Drivers, passengers, families crossing those bridges on their way to school, to work, to home. I sit on my porch now in the evenings with Karen beside me, and the coffee going cold because we're too busy talking to drink it. The crepe myrtle is blooming again, pink and red and alive. And sometimes I think about that night at the scale house, the fluorescent lights buzzing, the truck idling on the platform, and Dale standing in front of me with a termination paper he'd already signed. I think about how easy it would have been to step aside, to wave the truck through, to go home and eat my soup and pretend nothing happened. But I didn't. And that made all the difference.